Welcome to Weird Games and Weirder People, a podcast about role-playing games and the weird, wonderful people behind them.
Hello Weirdos, this is Diogo Nogueira, and today we're gonna talk to a weird, wonderful creator, the Dark Lady herself, Kelsey Dionne. But maybe you don't know who Kelsey Dionne is, maybe you live under a rock or something. So Kelsey Dionne is a new and old-school tabletop RPG designer who founded Arcane Library in 2017, and her modernized take on OSR gaming, Shadowdark RPG, founded for $1.3 million on Kickstarter on March 2023. She's basically another rock star of gaming. I met her at Gen Con this year, and I couldn't believe it. She did know who I was, and we got to talk a little bit, really clicked. And then I said I wanted to do this podcast one day, and she was really kind, and I invited her. We had a really great talk. We gave relationship advice here. We talk about horror. We talk about her history in gaming, how she had the opportunity to play with Gary Gygax, how many other games influence her, how she's aware of story games. She plays a lot of stuff, and Shadowdark is really a collection of all her favorite styles of gaming, her favorite things he learned through all this journey, and created a really cohesive experience with a lot to offer. And it was a great chat. I hope you enjoy it as much as we did. So let's get weird with Kelsey Dionne. Hey Kelsey, first of all, I want to welcome you to the show. It was so great meeting you at Gen Con, and I've been following your work for a while. And I'm watching all these videos from Shadowdark. I haven't read all the rules yet because I'm really of like a physical book kind of person. But I'm reading a lot of the videos and following your work and seeing other people say great things about Shadowdark. And I'm really excited to have you here. And I've studied some of the rules. And first of all, how are you?
I'm doing really well, Diego. Thank you so much for having me on here. It was so nice to meet you at Gen Con. So I'm really glad that we got to connect there, and now we get to talk again.
Yeah. I mean, this podcast was kind of a way for me to like extend Gen Con until I can get there another time. But I mean, you're like a rock star of RPGs, like make like a $1 million, and Shadowdark everybody's talking about. I even dreamed about making like a Primal Dark kind of game, but for some reason maybe someone don't know who Kelsey Dionne is, and I always like to ask people who come here for them to introduce themselves, how they see themselves, how they see what work they do. And if you can, besides that, tell us a little small weird detail about yourself, maybe the way you do coffee, maybe how you like to wake up or something like this.
Yeah. Well, okay. So yeah, I'm Kelsey Dionne. I've been working in the TTRPG industry since about 2017, where I first started publishing like 5th edition D&D material. So that's what I did for several years. And I kind of gradually started to move back towards old school gaming, which is where I got my start. And I started to want to write adventures for more of an old style of gameplay, but I was so specific about what I wanted that I ended up having to write Shadowdark RPG to fit with the kind of design that I wanted to make in my adventures. So that's what I ended up doing. It took a few years, published that thing on Kickstarter, and it went so much crazier than I ever could have guessed. So that was a very wild time. And then now that's what I do. I work on Shadowdark, and a weird thing about me, I've grown up playing music, and I've played a lot of different instruments. I'm a classically trained violinist.
Wow.
And I switched more over to kind of folk music. So now I play an instrument called the mandolin, it's like a violin, but like a little mini guitar version that you pluck. And so I'm an avid mandolin player. I don't know if anyone knows that.
Wow, it's very nice. And I love seeing how all creators of RPG are really artists, and they always dabble with different mediums, and they explore how to express themselves, not only through games and RPG or even art, but through other ways to explore who they are. Because I mean, I think we find a lot of who we are through exploring the things we like to create. And talking about a little bit of the stuff that influenced in the Shadowdark, I've do a little bit of research on you. I hear you talk about how you played with like Gary Gygax and other great people in the conventions you went, and it was like, oh my god, I'm so envious. Like from here in Brazil, I could never do this. And I see you talked about being influenced by Overstar stuff, but you started playing AD&D Second Edition, which was really like the first real edition I understood of D&D, because I played D&D Basic when I was a kid, but I didn't understand anything. As we were talking about the video, I remember you talking about you really didn't understand. I remember Halfling for me was like a mixture of dwarf and elves. So they were awesome. Yeah. They had the powers of dwarves and elves, so they were great. But I'm interested in what kind of games or RPGs or any other kind of games you see as formative for the way you see game or game design.
Yes. Oh, that's such a good question. I did play a lot of D&D in general when I was younger, because that's kind of, I think back then that was sort of the game. Like people weren't aware of as many other games, although there were a lot of really good ones like Traveler and all that. It just wasn't on my radar as much. So early on, it was a lot of that. I did play a little bit of Roll Master, where you practically need like a binder to track your character sheet. The character sheets are like dozens of pages long. And funnily enough, I think that did really influence how, what I ended up doing with game design, because I found Roll Master to be so complicated that I couldn't follow it. And I was like, I wish this were simpler, and what else? I definitely did, this is an interesting thing. I was playing third edition when the Eberron campaign setting came out. I don't know if you remember that. Strange time, because Wizards of the Coast did like a big contest, and so many people submitted campaigns that they wanted to design. And Wizards was like, all right, this is going to be our big new campaign setting. We're going to choose one person and we're going to go all in on helping them develop this. And Eberron won. And I remember being so fascinated by seeing a new game world kind of come to life for the first time with all of this high production value, and see it grow from one idea into a book, and then 2 books, and then books about like the different cities and the different environments. And so that was really inspiring and influential, because I realized that even a company as big as Wizards still starts from the ground up when they're making something new. And I was like, wait a minute, like you can really just start with an idea and then turn it into something this crazy and cool. So it was really impressive to see that. I loved watching Eberron develop.
Yeah, there's something magical about seeing something start small and grow. And that's something I try to do with my games, because I remember the first game I tried to make was like this big 300 pages game and it would never get done. And I got this idea too. I'm going to make like the minimum viable product for this, and then I can make it bigger. And when you see that even like big companies can start that way, they can start with something small and then grow. That's really great. And since you made Shadowdark, do you have plans to grow it like this, like Eberron? Do you have plans for a setting and to explore like the world of Shadowdark or adventures? What are like your plans to grow it? I mean, it's already very complete. There's something I said I didn't read it, but I flipped through it. It's a really complete system, a lot of tools to help you make the best of the game without necessarily supplements or adventures. I think that's a great approach that the author takes, and bringing that to people that are more familiar with 5e and see that they don't need to wait for like this new adventure. Just roll some dice, make some shit up, and play, and that's fantastic. But I was curious if you were planning on growing it, and if you're doing it like all by yourself, or you're growing Shadowdark like Eberron, because it's a multitude of people doing it.
Yeah, that's a great question. I really do want to write more material for Shadowdark. Like, I feel like the core book was kind of the bare bones engine for making all kinds of other different stuff. So I really want to write more like genre and thematic type stuff. I would love to work on maybe more setting material that goes pretty far outside of what's actually in the core book, like something really different. Like, I mean, like Eberron, really. Eberron was very different from standard fantasy D&D. So I would love to do more work like that for the game, and I'm planning on it. I'm working on some now.
Can you share anything with us, or like
well,
like,
sure.
Yeah.
I am always writing zines. Like zines are one of the I love writing zines. I think you and I both really like that format. Like the digest size, like really impactful piece of world building. But each one is a kind of a contained world setting with its own classes and stuff. It's not really like a mixture of rules and whatever. They're all meant to be their own isolated setting, with like a hex crawl, adventures, new classes, gear, monsters, all of that specific to that world. So I'm working on 3 of them right now, which there's a lot of them. One of them's going to be like an Amazonian setting. I am fascinated by the whole vast Amazonian continent, and it's so inspiring. And so I love that really sort of trackless, tropical rainforest type vibe. So inspired. And then the next one's probably going to be about the underworld, like the Shadowdark itself, the world of the mythic underworld, fully set there. And then the third one is turning out to be entirely about a city. So it's going to be all set in one city. Yeah. I don't know, what do you like find that you get inspired by like a really specific piece of subject matter, and then you're almost able to write an entire product on that one thing?
Oh yeah. I mean, I was talking to Chris McDowell from Into the Odds, and like we have notebooks with ideas. We can write games for like decades. We don't know if we'll get to, but I mean, one thing I do is that I hire artists to make covers for games I want to make, and they haven't been made yet. So I have 2 covers I paid quite some money to make. So I have discovered, I have to write this game because I already paid for the cover. So I have one called In Search of Happiness, which is basically about life and like stoicism, like you go through life and stuff happens. And another one inspired by like Discworld, like Ankh-Morpork, but being like the small gods. You as a player, like small gods controlling these mortals in the city, and I really want to make that, but I also want to make finished stuff for Primal Quest. So there's always this. I get hyper focus on specific stuff, and I start making. I have to stop myself. Oh, I have to finish other stuff before I do this. It's probably like that. Like it's probably that's something I kind of want to ask you to. Probably people are expecting you to do a lot of stuff for Shadowdark. And I don't know if do you still want to make a lot of stuff for it, or do you want to explore other stuff? I don't know if you have this dilemma that I sometimes find myself in. I want to explore Primal Quest and do a lot of stuff, but I want to do this other thing too. And like, you can't do it all. So how do you administer this? Because I see you are an artist, so you're like a musician too. So you probably want to do something else, right?
It does, right. I have that problem too, where I'm always writing like 4 books at the same time, and it's really hard, right, to choose one to focus on. I always am torn by that, because I think there's something really valuable to taking action while you're inspired, because inspiration doesn't last forever, and so if you can really leverage that excitement and use it to get as far ahead as you can, that's great. But sometimes it means you're doing multiple things at once. And I'm definitely in that boat. And, I have tons of endless excitement for writing Shadowdark stuff, but there are other games I love too. I have friends like Index Card RPG is a longtime game I've loved by Runehammer Games. I always love writing for that. I'm so excited about Chris McDowell's he's doing his Mythic Bastion Land thing. I'm so excited to look into that and play that. And gosh, there's just so much cool stuff that it's like you said, I feel like I have more projects than I could write in a lifetime. And so it's hard to focus on one to really dig into.
We need clones.
Yes. Okay, I just need someone to answer all my emails for me so I can go write.
Yeah. Do you spend a lot of time answering? I'm terrible answering emails. I'm pretty sure there's a publisher in Germany that thinks I don't like them, or I was trying to do something behind her, but because I suffer from anxiety disorder, and I take meditation for it, but sometimes it gets too much. Last year, I was like 8 months without being able to write or even answer emails. So it gets bad. So, but I've learned something today. I would try this. Instead of making like the mailbox or to-do list, like leaving all those emails there, you actually open the emails and see, oh, this will take me 1 hour to answer. And then I block a time on my calendar for that. So the email is not a surprise anymore. I know and then I put the link to email in the calendar. So I already know kind of how much time it will take me. I will try that. Because, yeah, sometimes I would get emails, oh, I'll have to deal with this. And I wouldn't even look at the email thinking it could be something very complicated. Sometimes it is not. I don't know. But yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I run into that too. And then the more it gets backlogged, the more you feel like you can't look at it because it's so intimidating. I run into that, and it's funny because it is true when you really look at something, you realize that it's not as complicated of a thing as you thought. But and you must get this too because you're on social media, you have email, you might have Facebook, you might have Twitter, you might have Discord, and there's just so much coming in from all of those different angles. You could spend all day answering them and never get ahead. And so I'm sure there are people out there who think that I'm mad at them too because I didn't answer, but the reality is I just couldn't yet.
You can't because you want to live outside of this game too. You have your partners, you have family, you have friends, and it's very important to go outside of gaming. Cause of my anxiety is I get hyper focused and I only do gaming, and I neglect myself, my family, things that actually make me happy too. And then we have to be able to step back and say, okay, that was enough for this. I answered some emails. I can't answer everything. We can't, There is a new game once said that there was some time he realized that he wasn't a writer anymore. He answered emails and occasionally would write. And then I said, oh, I only look at mails like once a week because otherwise it's impossible.
That is so true. This made me think of a deep. Can I ask you a deep question that I've been thinking about lately?
Oh yeah. I would love to.
Yes,
Yeah.
I would be so interested to hear your thoughts on this because I don't know what I think about it yet. I realized that because gaming it was our hobby, right? Before it was our job.
Yeah.
And I love it, and I could spend all day thinking about it, and I do. And I realized, what do I do that isn't gaming? I'm like, if someone took gaming away from me for a day, like, what would I do with myself? I don't know. I genuinely wonder, and I get a little worried because I'm like, would I go like shopping, or would I
you're a musician. You're a musician.
Yes,
you're an artist. You have
true.
all these options. I want to come back later and ask about your music, but for me, I have a day job. I'm a tax collector, like a proper tax collector for the government.
Wow.
Yeah, I hate it because intuitively, like you study, and tax is like this beautiful thing. Like those who have too much will give, so the government will provide structure for those who doesn't have to have less than they should. But in reality, like politicians and lobbyists and people who actually pay taxes are the poor and the middle class. And actually, at least here where I live, the rich doesn't pay property taxes.
Here too.
So I sometimes say that, I feel like a legalized gangster. I'm like extorting these people, and especially in Brazil, like my city is a mess. But anyway, I would say that I'm a public servant, that I'm dream of being an RPG writer. And then I became an RPG writer. Somehow I won an award, and people actually respect what I do. But I have other passions too. Like I love comedy. I love stand-up comedy. And now I'm an RPG writer, and I dream of being a stand-up comedian, But I mean, it's just things like we like explore, because I had I was thinking about like leaving my day job and try to live off games. But one fear I had was, if this actually becomes my job and not something I do out of love, will I be as stressed as I am with my day job and with RPGs, and this will start being something I enjoy and being work. I don't know, how do you see that, but that's something fear I have. But I also I see myself as an artist, and I see you as an artist too, like you talked about music and stuff. So I think there's always something we can explore. I'm always curious of trying new stuff. Like this podcast, for example. I wanted to do a podcast. I bought a $10 course on Udemy. I made the course, I made the podcast. Like we can try other stuff, I think. I think the artist's mind is always curious. And if we didn't have this, we would seek something else for sure.
Yeah,
What do you think?
You're right about that. Yeah, I do think you're right. And I think, well, I thought it was so interesting too that you said you were worrying that if you started doing this as your full-time day job, that it might become like more a source of anxiety or unhappiness than happiness. And that is a risk people run. I think I can honestly say that thankfully I don't have that as a real problem for me, but I could if I wasn't careful. Because if suddenly everything you do is centered around trying to turn it into a way to earn money, it really does it can force you into doing things that you don't want to do. So there have been times where it was challenging, where I had to really decide whether I want to do something and hate it to make the money, or to not do it and think, wow, am I going to get by these next couple months? So there have been moments like that, but it can be a little challenging, but also it's not inevitable. It's not inevitable that you'll come to hate it. It's only, I think, if you're not careful. But yeah.
It's something I try to concentrate to, because when you start to get recognition, people like your job, you start to enjoy this recognition, people say nice things to you, and you release new stuff, and all of a sudden nobody really cares, and you start asking, is this good or is this bad, or should I continue to do this? And then I started getting to that space, seeking validation for others, and I hate it. So I have to think about it as this is something I'm doing because I want to see this. I want to play this game. So I'm doing this game for me. And that's the first thing I do. And this game's for me. If nobody plays it, who cares? It's for me anyway. And
exactly.
Yeah. And enjoying the process of making it. Like I have to enjoy just creating this stuff. No matter if this will get published, will get awarded, or people will buy it. Because if you get too much in this space of, I have to finish this, to do this, to get this money, to send it to that award, or to do something, you lose focus what you're actually doing. You're just looking far ahead, and you don't see what is in front of you. I don't know if that makes any sense, but for me, that kind of helped me get over the burnout and anxiety of like doing the work.
Yeah, I again agree so much that the best material that I've written is because I was excited about it and passionate about it. And on the flip side, I don't want to say I've willfully put bad material out into the world, but I think the stuff that I struggled with the most and that maybe wasn't as strong was stuff that I really didn't want to do. And you can tell like that comes through in the work. So you're so right about that. It's trying to preserve your own, it's really trying to follow what you find the most value in, because that's the only way to really honestly make good work, you know?
That's kind of something what this podcast is kind of about too, to get to know the people behind the games, the stuff that they're passionate about, even their like philosophy, values or something, because I think we can understand a little bit more of the games they make as we understand them a little bit better, you know? And that's something I try to do here, and I would like to ask you, Kelsey, how would you describe the weird? How do you see it, and why do you seek it in your work and in your life in general?
Yeah. Oh man, how am I weird? I don't know if you feel this way. I feel like I've always been weird. And not always comfortably. You know, when I was a kid, I didn't really feel like I fit in a lot with my friends. Not that they were unwelcoming. I had dear friends when I was a kid, but I always was kind of strange. Like I've always been a tomboy, so I've always been like kind of a boyish kid, and all my friends were boys, and I didn't get what the girls liked doing. I didn't get it, and I didn't like it. And but it, I was also a small, tiny girl, and so like I couldn't always keep up with my friends who were boys, who were like playing football or climbing in trees. I would try my best, but I was definitely, you know, just the tiny little girl over there. So it's been strange, but I think that I don't know. I've always just been really interested in stuff that doesn't seem to match with what people expect that I should like when they look at me. Is that, you know, is that strange? Um, and I also find that I get really obsessively interested with um subject matter that is kind of like off the beaten path, you know, like adventuring and exploring and sword and sorcery books and like dorky fantasy that no other little girls liked. And you know, it felt like I was the only person like that sometimes when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Exactly like me, you know, at least. But I had friends who I had a lot of friends who were really into that kind of stuff too. But I think it was more comfortable for them because that was expected of them. They were like kind of dorky little boys, and it wasn't weird for them to be super into Mortal Kombat, the video game, and like stuff like that. That's yeah. So that's, but I used to be more self-conscious about that, you know, especially as a kid. I used to think that I truly was very weird, and now I love being weird. I love it. I really enjoy having strange interests and obsessions and learning about weird stuff that you know, I don't think most people would even find worth talking about. Yeah, what about you? Like, how would you characterize your own set of weirdness?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I think there's a lot of similarities. I've always kind of felt like an outsider, and like at RPGs, I used to wear this like columns gear, and I don't know. I was very shy, and now I'm like going through the diagnosis of ASD, like being autistic, because we found out my kid is, and like we are so alike. Like he's basically my clone, and the doctors is pretty sure I have. So, but I'm going through all the tests. Not only autism, like depression, ADHD, and all this stuff. But I don't know. I always felt like an outsider. I always had really close friends, but really like a small, tight group of friends that into the same weird stuff. And I always been kind of macabre. I don't know how to say that in English, but weird and like the undead and skulls and this kind of stuff. And it's really weird because my kid, we're always trying to be so gentle with him, and he always has this death or something. He has this weird energy in him too somehow. But
he's like you in a lot of ways. Do you feel like you're gonna be able to kind of guide him because you're so similar? You're almost like, I know what you're going through.
Oh yeah, much better than my parents ever did, you know, because I mean, they didn't have the information we had now. Now we can understand that autism, there's various kinds of autism. Like a lot of people say, oh, are you sure your kid is autistic because he's one of those high functional ones? But he has really, like me, has really sensitive about some stuff, difficult with social environments and social cues. And I remember like every girl I ever met or dated, they said, oh, I never realized you're into me because you always seem like you're angry with something, like because like expressions and so I've learned it. I learned it over time. I've got better to it. But as a teenager, I had no idea what I was doing, and social cues were hard to me. So I think that helped with being weird. But I mean, obviously, like in Brazil, like in the US, like we had satanic panic during the 90s because we had like murders, and they found RPG books with people that killed, and then RPG makes people kill each other. And so like I had, my parents didn't want me to play, like kids in school would find us weird because we played RPGs. I had people I was going out with, when they find out I was playing RPGs, they would stop going out with me, and this kind of stuff. But yeah,
wow,
I don't know.
That must have been so tricky. Yeah, I you know, it's so interesting because I guess Brazil had the satanic panic a little bit after it happened in the US.
We all have
just
everything
missed it
10 years after you guys have, like, just wait 10 years it gets here.
Oh my gosh, well, I hope something good happens here that gets there in 10 years instead of just bad stuff, you know?
Yeah. But I mean, yeah. What something I was actually asking is like, how would you define weird? Like,
Oh,
you said like weird being something that doesn't match. Does that kind of something a definition would find like, oh, I identify weird by being something that is out of place or something. I mean, again, like Chris McDonald said, the weird is in the absence of stuff, and sometimes like to find the weird is a new way to see the mundane in a new light, or I don't know.
yeah. No, I think you distilled what I had said very well, and that I I think my instinct is to say that, in my opinion, something weird is something that doesn't match the expectation,
Yeah,
because we build so many frameworks in our
yeah,
day-to-day life
a bit
surrounding.
patterns. Yeah, to recognize
Yeah,
and be safe, and with something that break that pattern, and we kind of
right.
cause our attention and make us see this in a different way. Yeah,
Yeah, that's exact. And in fact, I think that we spend most of our day following those patterns and very
yeah,
little of our day not. And um, so when something falls outside of it, I think it immediately strikes us as either novel or weird or both.
yeah,
And that touches upon, when we decide whether something is dangerous or concerning or um, you know we when something happens outside of our expectations, we have to make decisions about it, whether it's something good or bad for us, and it could fall either way. And so I think that's, when we feel weirdness, we're feeling the need to make a decision about whether something might be even like a threat to us, or whether it's just something interesting but mundane. So it touches on danger almost, at least in my opinion. Yeah.
well, it calls for a reaction. It causes our attention and asks us for, well, do something. So yeah, that's
Yeah.
great. Yeah, for RPG especially, because we want to move things forward. So having something that makes the player say, well, what the hell is that thing? They will, at least they will try to poke it with a 10-foot pole or something, right?
We hope so. When we design, that's what I mean. I laugh about this because I write these situations and I'm like, I hope they mess with it. Like, I hope I can
Yeah,
entice the people playing this to mess with this, because
yeah.
half the time something bad might happen, but still you try to convince them and pull them into this weird situation you set up. So that's actually really funny.
Yeah. Do you have any strategy to how to attract players to mess with weird stuff that you put on the games you make?
Yeah. Well, it might even just be simple things where, like, not everything, again, weird in the game world is bad. You have to have it be a good, even split sometimes, so that there are benefits sometimes to messing with things. That was one mistake as a kid that I would make when I was writing, little D&D adventures for my friends. Like, everything they touched was bad, and so they would
Yeah.
just go into a room and not want to do anything. And I was like, well, why don't you guys want to interact with this room? And it I think you learn over time that
Yeah.
it's like a weird sword fight, where sometimes you're giving and taking and pulling and pushing, and you can't always be the aggressor, otherwise that becomes too predictable. And that's the same thing with writing, or really with anything. You have to have ebb and flow. There needs to be the ebb and flow to it.
Yeah, yeah. It has to be like a variation. Uh, One example I sometimes bring up is like the trilogy of movies of The Hobbits, because in the movie, for
Yeah.
example, you have calm moments and action and calm moments, but in the movies, like action, 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 action all the time, and sometimes you just get, if it's bad all the time, you get tired. You don't explore it.
Yeah. Yeah. There's
Yeah,
no contrast. And then you just kind of get like overwhelmed with the same thing all the time. Yeah.
yeah. Kelsey, talking about creation, as you make music, you write. Do you have any kind of creative ritual you do before start writing? Either like music you listen, or like some invocation of the muse before start writing, or a funny hat you wear, or a toy you get by your side to help you get inspired, or anything like this?
Yeah. I do. I'm sure. I wonder if somebody doesn't have a weird ritual they do, I'm almost like, are you okay? But I I definitely listen to music. A lot of times I'll try to pull together playlists that feel like they match what I'm trying to work on. I think a lot of people actually do that. But it's really funny. I have here, I'll show you this. I don't know if this will be like visually on the podcast, but I have this little like Goku.
Oh
You know
yeah,
Dragon Ball Z? It's like an
yeah, I love
anime.
it. Yeah,
And
I tried to
I mean, I
convince my
love,
kid to watch it, but he is more into other stuff. But yeah.
yeah, you know, it's hit or
It's so
miss,
long
but
too. I mean, now they have one that's
yes.
compacted, but I remember the fights would last like hours and hours. It was
Yeah, you would wait like
yeah,
20 episodes
yeah.
for
It
like
was the
5 minutes to
subject
pass.
of my recess in school for like years. Like we all watched it. Did you see last night? you know.
Yeah, like they got through like 3 more seconds of the fight, but yeah, it was. I would run home. I would be so sad because Dragon Ball Z would come on after school, like right when we got home.
Oh,
And if the bus wasn't fast enough, I would miss like the first 10 minutes of it, and I'd be so sad. But my little this is so funny. But my little ritual with Goku is he's kind of always like standing in a way that I think reflects what I'm working on in my life.
the Genki
You
Dama.
know, like yeah, like right now he's charging up a spirit bomb because I haven't delivered the Shadowdark books yet, and they're still on the way. So that I haven't dropped the spirit bomb yet. And during the Kickstarter, he was doing a little Kamehameha. He was shooting his
Ah,
best
yeah.
attack, and I just think it's fun to look at him and think, oh, Goku's reflecting my current state of effort in my life. And so, one time
That's
my
great.
wife like messed around with the figurine like one day, and I was like, you do. I was like, I need Goku to be standing in the right way. It was so dorky. I mean, we laughed about it, but I was like, 10 minutes later, I had him set back
Yeah.
upright. So yeah.
Yeah.
Do you
I
have
have
rituals?
I have Riemann right over there with Skeletor in the shelves.
Oh,
And I have
nice.
some Star Wars toys here. But my ritual is more I have this music that I sing every day. It's like a punk rock song from a band here that plays with Mark Ramone. They have like this Ramone style music. Like for me, the best band of all time is the Ramones.
Ooh, good
I mean,
call.
you're a musician. You probably don't think them like too much, but I mean, for me, it's like I don't know. The indie
I
OSR
yeah.
stuff, people identify a lot of metal. For me, it's a lot about punk rock. Like you make do with what you have, and you make zines with like 3 short songs, and that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I this music is like about no matter if it's sun or if it's the moon. Life is like a punk rock show. You just have like 50 minutes to show what you got. Kick out the bad stuff. Just keep going and play your parts. And no matter if it's sun or light. So I see that's more like no matter what you're doing, try to make something creative like every day. Forget the bad stuff. Sit down 15 minutes, half an hour. You can try to make something, and that's what I try to do. Like, because as we were talking before the show, like I was rushing here to get here on time, like the kids, the day job, and all this bunch of stuff to do. So I try to make the most of my time. If I only have 30 minutes, 15 minutes, it's punk rock, baby. Just sit down, write what I can, forget if I don't. And if the time is done, I just mark on my calendar, because I have like a year-long calendar on the wall with all the days. So every day I make something, I cross the day, and I try to make like the worm as bigger as I can. If I miss, I try to make the next worm bigger. And that's like a creative tip I got from Jerry Seinfeld, the comedian,
Oh my gosh. Yes. I feel like I've heard this this kind of technique where you just you mark a day every day that you manage to do something, even if it's just a little bit, and you just try to keep it going. I should try that. That's a really good idea.
Yeah, that's what it's like. Comedy. I'm really into comedy, and I listen to podcasts, I read books, and they have all these creative rituals that I incorporate into RPGs, and some comedians choose the way they treat the media, and I try to explore the media of RPGs in a similar way. Like for me, like my creative crush is a comedian called Bo Burnham. Yeah. I don't know. He has a special Netflix called Inside. If you haven't seen it, it's fantastic. He recorded, edited, he did it all by himself during the pandemic, because he was a very young comedian when he got famous. He was 18 years old when he got his first special on HBO. And by 2015 he was like 15 years old. He was very famous, but he was having panic attacks on stage, so he stopped performing for 5 years and was seeking treatment, was getting better, and he was getting back to stage on 2020. We had the pandemic, so he stayed home
Oh,
and he made a special at home. Not like a full hour recorded, but recorded various videos. He makes music too. Oh, you're a musician. Oh, I hope you like it because it's very good. And I listen to his music as just music. I dance to his music, but it's funny. It's really well produced. It's intelligent. It has social critique and stuff, and it's really a picture of the pandemic because he deals with anxiety. And you, as you see the special, he begins with like a short beard, and by the end, the beard is like long. It's great.
I've
I'll send you the
absolutely
link.
heard of it. I haven't watched it, but I've heard of it because when you said, "Oh, he's also a musician," I was like, I know who that is. I remember hearing about this special. I really need to watch it.
Have you heard about the music "Welcome to the Internet"? Like, welcome to the Internet. Take a look around. Have
Is
heard
that
it? Because
him?
yeah, that's him.
Yes, I have heard of it. Oh my gosh, now I really need to watch this.
Yeah.
Oh,
Oh,
that's so cool.
he's so good. And his
Yeah, he did
vinyl,
say.
it's fantastic. It's a boxed set, and each vinyl, you can change the covers because each cover has like a acetate cover over it, and that acetate changes the image behind because the way they did the colors, like those illusions. And so you can change the covers between each of the vinyls because there are 4 vinyls, and each time the cover change. So I was thinking about because people are doing like RPG vinyls, like Games Universe, and I was thinking about like a setting with this, and like if you go to the Shadow world, you would put the purple acetate over it, and it would change the map or something. It's really inspiring for RPG stuff. So yeah,
That is so cool. Oh my gosh, you have to do that. That would be so cool.
yeah, like it's in my notebook of ideas. Maybe I'll get to it. Maybe I won't.
Yeah,
And that's
got a lot
something
going on.
I would like to ask you too. Is there like an artist from not from RPGs that inspires you for you to seeking? It can be a musician or I don't know, a painter. I don't know. It inspires the work you do.
Yes, there is. I'm gonna look at my phone to remember his name because I was just looking at his art. But he's a Japanese visual artist who does a type of he did this sort of vaporwave style art that was before vaporwave itself was a trend, which if I had to explain vaporwave, I would call it like surreal West Coast American art.
Oh,
The artist's name is Hiroshi Nagai. And he's from Japan, but he makes sort of his vision of this surreal, really vibrant, peaceful West Coast, like Americana art. And when I look at it, I'm like, oh my gosh, I feel like he's like turning what I see, I've seen these landscapes, but yet he makes them more real than the ones that I see with my own eyes. And
yeah,
it's so inspiring. I love I don't know, I love this kind of sense of peace and majesty that he captures. And he somehow, gosh, I wish I could explain it better. Hiroshi Nagai, he somehow creates these nostalgic, heart-wrenching pieces of still life art that I find so inspiring. I can stare at them and sort of make up stories for what you see, and that to
yeah.
me is just like, it's incredible when you can look at a single static piece of art and suddenly have this whole
Yeah,
like feeling of an era wash over you.
that's great. That's something that I find so fascinating about human art is called how artists can tell whole stories in like in a single picture. Like I always use I'm not religious or anything, but I always use the last supper painting like as an example because it's only one image, but that image tells so much because each one of the apostles is doing something. They're whispering or they're making a gesture, and they're always telling like a complete story in just one image. And that's one thing, that's one of the gripes I have with AI art, because they are not telling a story. They're like a repeating pattern, but they didn't have any intention of telling anything. So yeah.
That's so true. It seems yeah, when you look at AI work, I don't know, even if you don't know that it's AI, it almost feels like guesswork instead of intentional. Is that,
It can be a shiny, like a Easter egg, a shiny, beautiful Easter egg, but it's empty inside, because it lacks intentionality, and that's something essential for art, I think.
Yeah. That's so true. That's some of the most compelling like D&D artists, like from the 2E era. So I was just looking through Dark Sun, who the Brahm, this incredible oil painter, did the flagship art for it, and the entire setting was inspired by a painting that he just did for fun for himself. And can you imagine, like, one of D&D's most longly cherished settings for its just uniqueness was fully inspired by one man's painting? It's just incredible to think how much impact one piece of imagery can have.
Talking about RPGs, one of the questions I like to make to guests here is if you think RPGs are weird, and if you do, what would be like your favorite weird part of RPGs?
Yeah, I do think they're a little weird in a way because it's really difficult to explain them to someone who's never played one. It's almost like a concept they've never touched on, we've all seen movies, we've all read books, we know what comic books are, we know what podcasts, so many people know immediately what that is. And then if they've never had any contact with D&D, the only way to really get them to understand it is to have them play it. So that sets it apart right away as kind of a strange art form. But the thing I most like about it, that I think is both the weird but magical element of it, is that it might be the first time that you're going back to like doing collaborative make-believe ever since you were a kid. It's funny that we used to do, like, when you're a kid, you so easily play and make up ideas and say, well, let's say this happens. And then, no, that wouldn't be fair. Let's say it goes this way instead. And then everybody agrees. And then you just stop doing that. And you almost forget that you can. So it's funny. It's fun to see adults come back to the game, realizing that they've known how to do it all along. And of course they understand it. They just didn't think they did. And I really like that about RPGs.
Yeah, that's a great way to see it. Right? RPGs as a kind of return to child play, and that's really important through creativity and stuff, and really being to that play mentality. I think it's a nice way to see it, and then it brings you to a new way to collaborate with others. Because if we see, like in the 90s, was really strong this idea of like the DM being this storyteller, and he's gonna tell this great story, and you're gonna play it in kind of a railroady kind of way. And as you see games more as a play thing, we can be more liberal with stuff. We can let players explore, do stuff they like, and we can explore the stuff too. We don't have to be so attached to the prep we made or anything like this. So seeing it as a play is a fantastic way to see it, for sure.
Yeah. And then it makes sense to people in hindsight. They're like, oh, I get it. And now I understand what it is you do,
Yeah, it's always that moment, like you're explaining what RPGs are, and they ask, oh, it's like this other game. And I say, no, it's more like this. And so like this other thing. Yeah, quite, always like this, right? Yeah.
I have so many people in my family who still think that I design video games. And I'm like, that's close enough. Yeah, I'm just going to say that's about right. Yeah.
Yeah, I design analog video games. That's what I do. Yeah.
Yes. And it's as accurate as that is. It's hard for people to make the jump into getting it.
Kelsey, what would you say is like the weirdest thing, in your favorite weirdest thing about Shadowdark?
Ooh, I think the weirdest thing about the game is it uses real time a lot. like some people call it a gimmick, and I'm like, maybe it is, but
It's a
torches last for an
mechanic.
hour of real time. Yeah, it's a gimmick
It's
and a mechanic, but the game really is built around it. So I think like when people play it, they start to realize that it's not just like a bolt-on thing. Like everything about the game has been designed
yeah.
to support the fact that torches are limited and they last an hour of real time. And when you don't have one, things are super, super bad. So I think that was the most jarring thing for people about the game and the most unusual. And that's actually why I like it the most out of anything.
Yeah, and how hard it is for them to get a torch? Can they, like in the dungeon, stick like a piece of wood and get textile and make one, or if they run out of torches, they're like really screwed? How?
Yeah, it's kind of a blend. Like if someone makes a torch, I'll let them do it, but it doesn't last as long as like a
Yeah,
well-made torch,
yeah,
so they can get away with stuff like, creativity is in in finding a way to get light is really exciting and fun, but it's never quite as good as having an actual torch.
cool. Yeah, yeah. Kelsey, talking about games still, what would be the weirdest game you ever played? Or a
Ooh,
recent one, if you don't remember, like the weirdest, like a weird gaming
yeah.
experience you can share with us.
Oh, there's two game systems that I found so weird and so fun that I can call to mind. The first one, which I think a lot of people have played now, it's been out a long time, was Dread, which is like a horror game where you're using a Jenga tower,
Yeah.
and every time you do something, you pull a piece out, and then if you're the one who causes the Jenga tower to crumble, your character dies. And that was one of my first non D&D gaming experiences. Actually, back in the day, I had a friend introduce me to that game, and I was like, "This is crazy! Like we're using a meta currency that the players know about to like not die." And like it was so weird, but so it worked so well that I was just like, "This is the weirdest, coolest thing ever." So I love that. And then a few years ago, I played a game called The Skeletons, um,
Yeah.
where you are the skeleton lurking in the dungeon for like eons at a time, just waiting for adventurers to show up, and you're rolling to see like how many millennia are passing between each occurrence. And I really loved that. I thought that the way that time moved and the world changed around you was so fun and exciting to see develop. So that one was a complete reversal of what you expect from Dungeons and Dragons, which is why it was both weird and delightful. I loved it.
Yeah, it's those are really great games, and really Dread is a classic. Like a lot of people get their indie kind of initiation with games like Dread or like Fiasco, or like
Yeah.
this classic narrative driven games. And Jenga Tower is great because it has the tension of the game, because it's a horror game, but the tension of like pulling the pieces and seeing if it will drop. And it's really well built game for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
And now, Kelsey, we're getting more into personal and talking about life experience and being weird. Uh, uh, has this year been weird for you? How has this year been treating you?
Yeah, it's been so strange. I started the year off putting the Kickstarter up for Shadowdark, and my life really changed in about a month.
Yeah.
It was, super exciting, and I'm still trying to figure out how, what my life is going to be like now after getting to be so fortunate is to have such a successful Kickstarter. And so it's a little bit of an identity crisis where I'm like, gosh, I'm not just this obscure person like laboring in darkness writing these little things. Like there are enough
Yeah.
people who care about what I do that it
Do you feel
matters. And
pressure?
so
Do you feel pressure?
um I feel like a little bit of a responsibility to make sure that I take care of the community and the players, and make sure that they have cool new material, and that that yeah, yeah. I guess I feel like I've become sort of the steward of something that I didn't realize I would be, you know. So it's a strange feeling. But it's all good stuff though. It's all good
Yeah,
stuff. It's just yeah, where you realize that there are people who care enough about what you do um that you should reciprocate by doing cool
yeah.
things for them. Yeah. Yeah.
It feels like that quotation that I don't remember in English how it is, but from the Little Prince, that you're responsible for everything you captivate or something. I don't know if it's in the same way that Little Prince is written in Brazil, but it's kind of feel like this. Like, if since you touched all these people with your game, you kind of feel responsible to keep them engaged with and providing them with more good stuff. And
Yeah.
and I don't know. For me, sometimes it can be a pressure, and sometimes I have to say, well, you, Kelsey, you give them already so much. So if you ever feel pressure, don't worry. Like, the game is fantastic, it can do a lot of stuff already, and don't feel pressured like to do this. It's great that you can do, but we are enough, you know. I don't know.
Thank you. Thank you
Yeah,
so much. Well, and you have good advice on this because you're so well recognized too, and you've probably had this experience of people being like, "Oh my gosh, like, what are you gonna write your next like giant OSE adventure or
yeah.
whatever, or your next system?" So, yeah, you've probably been through some of that too. Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, because I feel the pressure, like, oh, I should write more for Solar Blades and Cosmic Spells. Oh, why Sharp Soul the second edition isn't out yet? And people are asking me, and I feel this kind of pressure, and start getting. I have anxiety, so I start getting anxious, and stuff doesn't happen. But I have to say to myself, oh, I've given them enough. I've given myself. If I don't publish anything more, I've published enough. But I try to enjoy it, what I do, because don't feel the pressure. I don't know if you feel that way, but I like to share just to, I don't know, find common ground. I don't know.
Yeah, it's true. It's interesting to get to
Because you
talk
said
about.
you're,
It's yeah.
because you said you're like adapting to this new thing, and maybe you felt pressure and just trying to say, it's all good. You're doing great.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I do feel a little bit. It's good to hear
Uh,
that. It's good to know that, like, yes, you have to remind yourself that that you've given a great deal already. You've done your best already. And so you know, that doesn't mean one should stop working on what
oh
they
yeah,
like,
no. Yeah.
but don't forget, yeah, don't forget what has come before is a
Yeah.
good lesson. Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes I hear is like, remember how much you wanted to be where you are now. Like, the future seems scary, but remember how much you wanted to be where we are now, you know.
Yeah. So true. So true. Man. So it's been a strange year. Has your year been weird at all, Diogo? Have you had any weird stuff happen?
Yeah, I mean, as I said, like, my kid got diagnosed with ASD last year, and he moved to a big school this year in Brazil when we had all this adaptation. And I was having a trouble with burnout last year because after the award, I started having too much work offers, and I didn't know how to say no. Because I always felt like an outsider. And after I won an award, all these people I always wanted to work with me. So I said yes, of course. And I started getting things late because I was doing a lot of work, but my own personal projects, the stuff I really wanted to do, was kind of to the side. So I was working. I didn't see my own stuff progressing. So I was kind of feeling I'm not doing anything, even though I'm super tired. So it got to a point I had to stop everything, and then I went to Gen Con, and then I met you, I met Chris McDowell, I met so much people. I haven't been to Gen Con for 5 years. My last one was 2018, so I was really missing connecting with for me it's kind of my tribe, my people, and it was so good. And I came back recharged with completely different energy, you know, because I wasn't unhappy, but I was just like super tired. My kid is better at school. He's adapted. I think it was like a conjunction of all things. So the half of the first year, I was happy because I was with my family. I was spending time with my kid, reconnecting, and dealing with my anxiety and discovering all these things that I'm now doing the diagnosis. But after Gen Con, I don't know, kind of the creative community helped me see that I can still do this, because there was a point in the first month that I said, oh, I think I will never write an RPG book again,
Oh
And
no, I'm so glad that you broke
yeah,
through that, because that would be a shame if we would all have that would be a great loss to the RPG community if you never wrote another book again. So that's Gen Con was so reinvigorating. It was so special. I almost didn't go because I was also really kind of burned out and tired, and had been going so
glad you
hard the
did.
whole
Yeah.
year. Oh, I'm so glad I did. It really was one of the best. I love all the cons I go to, but Gen Con was for some reason incredibly special. Getting to spend that time with everybody and see all the people who I admire so much. I mean, just having you walk up to me in the dealer hall, I turned around and I was like, oh my God, that's Diogo. And I was like, I cannot believe that there are just all these people who I've admired for so long just walking around,
Yeah. No, and you were walking like with Dr. DM and Quest Bill Ben Milton and all these other like great figures there, and I got to talk to you, and you were like by far like the most sympathetic and kind person I met there, and it was really great to talk to you, and it was fantastic, and I got to meet all these other people, and the podcast was kind of the way for me to continue the Gen Con experience and get in this small, like an hour and a half, 2 hours to talk to someone. And because one of my favorite parts was like, I don't know if you remember saying if you're going to eat somewhere, because when you get to sit down and eat with some of these people, the conversations are much more relaxed, and we can get in the weird part, kind of stuff we're doing here.
Yeah, that was actually, that might have been the most fun part of all at the convention, was just going and having meals with all the people who I was so excited to be around. I mean, I wish I could have had dinner with every single cool person I met. It's hard to arrange, but
it's
impossible, but it is so
to
fun.
It's like this podcast, like there's so many people I want to invite, and some people are like starting asking to be on the podcast. And I want to invite everybody, but I mean, it's like 1 or 2 per week, or otherwise I don't do other things beside the podcast. But it's I understand. Like maybe some other time we go there, we can, I don't know, grab a coffee or something.
Yeah. Now, do you think you'll be able to go again for the coming year, or is it it's hard to get there? Even I don't live that far away, and it's hard for me to get there.
Yeah, I usually just go 1 year, and the other one I do go, and I go the other year, like save money. And for my partner to travel too, she's probably going to like her cousin wedding next year, and it's in California.
Oh, nice. That'll be pretty. Oh my gosh. I do that with my wife, where we kind of trade off big events. Like I'll go to Gen Con and she stays home and like watches we have a dog who's so spoiled. She's like a child, and we like can't bear to leave her alone. So we can't like travel and just like leave her somewhere. It's so bad. So she stays home with our dog, and then she'll go travel to see like her family or go see some friends for a few days, and I'll stay home with the dog. So
Hello weirdos, this is Diogo Nogueira, and I'm back with a word from our sponsors. Me. I just released a new game called Cosmosaurus, in which you play a dinosaur space ranger who protects the galaxy from evil threats such as slime bankers, undead pirates, and Cosmosaurus from a void dimension. It's a game with a runes-light system inspired by Forged in the Dark and Lasers and Feelings. It comes with a bunch of tables for you to generate content for it. If you know my games, they're really easy to play, and they have tools to help you improvise and play with low prep. It's an ideal game for one-shots, short campaigns, and introducing new people to the hobby, and it's a really perfect family game. I play with my kids all the time. It's a game inspired by Saturday morning cartoons. It's really well illustrated by Lucas Kowalski from Poland, and with a great layout by Guilherme Gontijo. It's a really fun game. You should check it out on DriveThruRPG, itch.io, or exclusively in print on exaltedfurniture.com. I have many other games there, check them out. All the links are in the show notes, so click there. And let's get back to Weird with our chat. Yeah. My wife is going to like São Paulo. It's a nearby city. It's like the closest thing in Brazil can get to New York because how these restaurants and this 24-hour culture, big city, museums and stuff. And like
Mhm.
since I go to Combs and I have kind of this daddy vacations without the kid and stuff. So that's like her mommy vacation with her friends and stuff. So
Yeah.
it's great. We need this time to be ourselves too. Like some people when you get married, get this mental, well, we become just one person, but we need this part being ourselves to don't remember who we are. Like it's great to be other person, but it's more like some is not like reducing to just one thing, right?
Yeah, it's so important. I mean, it's funny that we laugh about this because Jessie is so supportive of what I do, and she's my number one fan.
Oh yeah.
It's weird to say, but we have our own separate hobbies and our own friend groups, and she is so respectful of gaming, but she doesn't really love doing it. Like she's tried it,
Yeah.
but she's not really into it, and like that's okay. It's
Yeah.
and we each have our own interests that I think it's a lot healthier than if we had like merged into one person that did
Yeah.
all the same stuff, you know?
Yeah. It gets some help because you see some people doing that, and inevitably one of them years later say, "Whoa, I'm not this person. I'm not you," and then a crisis can happen. So it's important to give each other space to be themselves. So it's nice to talk to other people about this, and I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm going through a friend that is going through this problem. Like they're trying to be their own person, but like their partners are like trying to block this, and it's hard to watch, right? Because you see, because me and my partner, my wife, we went through some kind of this like during the pandemic. We always like crisis, and we're much better now and stronger and happier together. But we always had this, and we see other people going through it, and we don't know how can we help. It's hard.
Yeah. It's hard. It is hard. It's hard to I feel like the longer I'm married, the more I realize that it's you don't just sit back and let the
Oh
relationship
no,
just
it's work.
whatever. Yeah,
Yeah.
you have to continue to build
Love
yourself
is
as a
work.
person.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
is. It is. It's so worth it, but it's
Yeah.
yeah, it's about like really striving not to just stop.
Yeah.
Don't just like let yourself stop growing or pursuing things or
Yeah.
yeah, there I feel like that is a easy way is to get complacent, if you just stop being the person you were before you got
Yeah.
married. So anyway, this is marriage advice from game designers.
Well, it's part of who you are. That's
Yeah.
something I like to get into where we get here. But it makes a lot of sense because if we start loving ourselves for who we are, it's kind of hard to love someone else. So it's
Yes.
important for us to keep our identities and be sure of who we are, what we love, so we can see that in other person too and recognize that the other person can be different from us because we are different from them.
Exactly. Like when you first met them and they weren't in your life, you weren't doing
Yeah.
all the same stuff together, but you love them. So yeah, remembering that they're their own person, it just makes me more impressed by my wife. She's a really impressive person, and the more things she achieves out of her own interests and desire, the more I'm like, gosh, you're so amazing. I'm so excited for her, all the stuff that she does. And yeah, she's just a cooler person every day.
Yeah. Same feeling here. Like my wife, how the journey, all the things that she conquered, and she keeps growing, and it's healthy to be this one for each other. Like the same way you said, like your wife seems like your biggest fan, always supportive, and it's always like that with I mean partners with artists, because they have to be our fans. Sometimes they have to be our parents when like in this creative crisis, and then they're really fantastic. We wouldn't be here if it weren't for them, for sure. And then
Yes.
but recognizing how much awesome they are too, it's really important.
Oh yeah, like I think that if I didn't have such a supportive partner, there's no way I would be doing this work.
Yeah.
So she's like she believes in me more than I believe in myself
Yeah.
sometimes.
Yeah. all these creative books I read about, like arts or even philosophy, there's always a chapter about marrying well, choose well
Yes.
the person you're going to be with, because it's very important, because it's someone that will learn from and help you be better. There's something, if the person you are with are not helping you grow, it's helping to reduce you, get out of that relationship. The relationships, it's to help you be bigger and not smaller, right?
Yeah, it's so true. And the better I've done in life has been because I've been surrounded by not only a partner who
Yeah,
makes me better, but friends who inspire me and who are doing amazing things, um, and who have this really wonderful energy that carries you along with them. Like those are the kind of people, like the people at Gen Con. Honestly, I think that's
yeah,
why Gen Con was so lovely, is because we were surrounded by people with that energy who have infinite excitement to share, and they have
yeah.
such cool stuff they're doing, and you feel excited about it and they feel excited about it. So it's very contagious in a good way.
Yeah. That's really, as you said, it's like a mantra for all kinds of relationships, be it love interests or like partnerships, friends. The good relationships are the ones that makes us bigger and not smaller, and not makes
Yeah.
us like cut parts of ourselves to be, I don't know, accepted or anything like this. But yeah, let's finish our like game designers give love love tips. And Kelsey, talking about weird experience you might have had, do you have ever had being in states of altered perceptions, be it through dreams, hypnosis, or psychedelics or anything like this? And how did it make you see reality in a new way?
Yes, I when I was younger, I would get night terrors a lot. And I still as an adult, I sometimes do, but I don't know if you've ever had this, or if you know what these are. Um they're when you have a really powerful nightmare, but you're conscious, like you're actually awake during it
Oh
in
yeah,
partially. Um and so you can't move, but you are perceiving some kind of really intense, scary thing. And I haven't really done a lot of like other psychedelic things. I feel like night terrors were enough because I had a lot of them when I was a kid. And um they they definitely factor in still to this day to things that I write.
oh yeah,
Because I write a lot of horror, actually.
yeah.
Which is funny because I'm actually the biggest scared baby ever. Like I can barely sit through a horror movie. But I feel like they gave me a good understanding of something that's truly scary without actually being dangerous. Strangely, like I didn't have to be traumatized in order to understand terror because of these weird dreams. And so I think I would definitely call those a sort of psychedelic experience, because it's like an altered brain state. You're
Yeah.
perceiving something that's not real, and it seems completely real to you until you wake up. So I'm glad I don't have a lot of those anymore. I get them once in a while as an adult, but I don't think I've had one for a few years. But yeah, I don't know. What about you? Have you had anything like that?
I mean, I always say that I daydream so much that I don't have dreams when I sleep, because I barely remember what I dream. Uh, but about this night terrors, can you share any of those dreams, and how is your relationship with them? Because you seem to be inspired by them, but you fear them. So do you have kind of this love hate relationships with them? How they make you
Yes.
feel?
They're so when I have them, and I think this is common for people, it's always like there's like a man who I can't really see his features clearly, but he's like a few steps away from me, and he is trying to kill me. Like he's about to kill me. Like that's usually what it is. Like I know he has like a knife or something, and like you're stuck in this moment where sorry, like warning to anybody who finds these kinds of things scary. It's not real. It's
Yeah,
just a dream. But
content warning.
but
Yeah, okay.
yeah. If night terrors bother you, don't listen to this part.
Yeah.
But yeah, it, you feel real fear like during them, and you can't move. And I think that it kind of it sort of teaches you what it feels like to be fully helpless, in a situation where you're in danger. And that is a really important element of horror writing. And I think experiencing those things made me understand how powerful they are as a tool for creating like fear and suspense. Because to this day, I really believe that the scariest thing about any situation is not really knowing what it is that's trying to harm you, but being sure that it is and that it's out there. And I think that's like why the movie Alien is so scary, or like why I don't know if you ever saw this. There was a show that I think was on Netflix called Bird Box, where there were these monsters in the world that if you saw them, you would die. So people would go around with blindfolds on and stuff trying to escape these things. And you never saw what they looked like in the whole series, like in the whole movie. The audience never saw them, and that's why they were scary, because you knew they were out there and they could harm you and they would harm you, but you never understood them fully. And so I think that's the core of true terror and suspense. And I got to learn that lesson through experiencing terrible nightmares.
Yeah.
So that was a long story short.
That has some to do with that philosophy that some game masters shared about not naming the monsters. So you don't say, oh, you see a goblin. Oh, you see this figure in the dark. It's small and has all these warts, and start describing parts of the monster, but never give it its entire form. So they can't really understand it, and that's make it scary, right?
Mm. Yes,
yeah,
absolutely. It's a strong technique for being scary right there.
But do you wake up when these things happens, or do you see the whole dream? Like, what's the end?
Like
do you wake
I
up
can
or no?
see it. Like I can
Okay.
usually see it. Like I remember the last time I had one that he was standing in my door frame, and looking at me. But I couldn't see it. It's weird because I could tell that he was looking at me, but I couldn't see his features. And they feel like they go on for a long time, and I always have the feeling of trying to wake up during them, but you can't. Your like body is paralyzed because you're in that weird, you're in like a deep sleep state still, where your body is naturally it can't move. So I usually am trying to wake up, and then I eventually fall asleep again. And then I wake up a while later, but I never can wake up during them. That's the problem. I can never wake up during them.
I think I had one of these when I was a kid, and I associate that with ghosts. That's for me like my ghost story, because we had this Formula One pilot here in Brazil called Ayrton Senna. I don't know if you remember him. He was very famous. He was like 3 times champion, but he died in a race, and as it's people do, they started making jokes about it, and as a kid, I started making jokes about this dead idol I had, and was making jokes all day. And when I went home at night, my parents were traveling to São Paulo, and I was with my sister and my grandma, and I slept in my room, and I wake up in the middle of the night with someone pulling me from the bed, and I had to like hold on to the rails of the bed, and I must start to scream, but I couldn't scream because something was like choking me. It was all dark. I couldn't call anyone. And it was, for me, it took like hours like this. And I remember in the morning, when I told this to my grandma, she said that in the same night, someone was trying to push her out of bed, Yes.
Oh my, the same night? That is so supernatural. Like that's so weird, because not a lot of people who have night terrors, like will have something move them or anything during it. Like usually it's just like there's a bad thing in the room with you and you can't do anything about it. But it's like really rare for the dream to have some kind of like actual contact with you. So it's so unusual that
I felt like it was being pulled out. I was sure it was a ghost. You know,
Maybe it was. What
I don't
was
know.
that? Dang.
Now,
Did that ever?
now I associate with night terrors. I don't know if that is or not, but
Yeah,
I
I mean it.
prefer,
Yeah,
yeah, prefer to believe it's night terrors than ghosts. I know. But my
it
sister
probably was.
that lived in the next room, she said that sometimes she would see like this dark figure in like the corridor that goes
Yeah.
through our room, and she would grab this painting of Jesus Christ and put by her bed, and then the figure would go away.
Wow. Oh
Yeah,
my gosh, that's so scary. That's yeah, who knows? I feel like a lot of people who believe they've been abducted by an alien, that it was
yeah,
actually in some cases demonstrated to be a night terror instead.
yeah,
Because there were other people around who knew that they weren't ever moved from their location, but yet they experienced this nightmare where they were taken by aliens. So those really vivid kind of things tend to be night terrors. Yeah.
yeah. Well,
Ooh, scary. It's just
I've
after Halloween here, so we had our spooky holiday. So
Yeah,
this is
yeah.
right
It's
on
great way
theme.
to talk. Yeah, that's what I was gonna ask afterwards. Like, do you believe in ghosts? And have you ever seen one?
Ah, I don't know if I believe in ghosts. I think rationally that I don't, but I want to because I think it'd be really cool. I'm sure that there are things about the universe that we don't understand and that we can't perceive. We only have five senses, but there's so much more out there that we can't perceive, even though we know it's there. So who am I to
Yeah,
say, you know? But
yeah.
I I I thought maybe once I saw a ghost when I was a kid, where I was in Colorado, which is like a state with a lot of really high mountains and mines. So there was a lot of mining done in the mountains. And I went on a tour into one of these mines with my family, and they only take about like 10 people down at a time because you go down these really narrow shafts down really far in, and it's really hard to get people to fit. So they have one group go in, and then that group leaves, and then they bring the next group. Um, and we were walking past a place where there had been a collapse and some miners had died there. And I was at the back of the line. And I remember looking backwards up the hall, like up the tunnel, and I saw a man standing in the tunnel. And he was wearing like overalls, like work overalls. Um, and he's just watching me. And I was like, oh, I was like, is that like another tour guide? Like, are they bringing another group down? Or like, does he work here? And he just stood there for a while, and I looked back up to walk on the path a little
Yeah,
more, and then I checked to see if they were getting closer, and there was nobody. There was nobody there. And so I'm like, either they were playing a prank on us, or there was someone there and he left, although I don't know how because we were so far down the mine shaft. So I don't know. I
yeah,
maybe it was a ghost. I don't know.
yeah.
Have you seen one, do you think?
Yeah, well, there was this incident, and there was this other time that we used to go to like this house in the country that belonged to my mother's like boss. They would rent to us cheaper, and but there were stories that used to be like a farm that they a long time ago that had slaves and people died there. And I remember that like in the first floor of this house, there was no electricity, but you have like some rooms there with candles and this kind of stuff. But the only electricity in the upper floor. But like when all of the family would go there, like the kids would have to sleep in the lower floor. So I was, as you said, like I like horror. I've only watched an Alien like after 30 years old. I'm really scared as a kid. I hated watching that movie with the toy that's a killer,
Oh yeah.
Chucky. Yeah.
Yes.
And I was really scared, but I would have to sleep there. But I remember once there was no electricity, there was nobody at home. We just have been arrived, but I saw like in the last room in the first floor, light and the shadow of someone there. But there wasn't supposed to be anyone there, you know. And then I
no,
went to call my parents, and then I went back, and there was no one else there. But yeah.
oh my gosh. Do you ever wonder if it was someone trying to mess with you, or do you think like they
Yeah,
couldn't
that
have been?
there's the other problem is that because there's all these stories, and my family would go there, like my uncles would do stupid things to scare the kids, say
Uh,
they would drag chains, because there was this room there that we used to call like the screaming room, because legend says it would hear screaming coming from the room. So would be nights and someone would get to that room and scream to scare the kids. So I'm never really sure what was real, what was not, because people who lived there, they told us ghost stories, and my father said he saw his parents there, and had these weird stories mixed with the pranks that my uncles would play on us.
right. You're like you want to believe it was a prank, but at the same time, how can you ever know?
Yeah.
So whew, that's kind of scary. I would
Yeah.
I would not have been able to sleep downstairs. I would have absolutely not been able to do it. That is very brave of you.
Because the other thing is also that I would invite friends, so I didn't want to look like scared in front of my friends and stuff. So
Oh
yeah,
yeah,
I would,
yeah,
because we would sleep all the kids in there, so it was scary, but we were together. So it's good and bad.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so fun.
And what about aliens? Do you believe in aliens, in UFOs? Have you ever seen one?
Oh, I totally believe in aliens and UFOs. Because I just think it's impossible that there couldn't be some other intelligent life out there. It's just the universe is too big, and um, it's funny because my wife is actually super fascinated by UFOs and reports, especially lately in the US in particular. There's been a lot of new really official information that's been coming out that's just sort of hard to deny, like
Yeah.
really really trusted people in our military who would file reports saying they saw things. And I I wonder if I've ever seen one, because I used to live really far up, very, very far up at the north of the United States, with the border where Canada is. Um, and it's all just really dark forest up there, and it's pretty desolate. There aren't a lot of people who live there. Um, and so we lived out in the woods, and um, one night we looked out over the trees, and there was this orb in the sky that was like all different colors. It was all crazy different colors, and it was strobing between all these rainbow colors, and then it would move super fast, like without any acceleration or deceleration, and just stop. And then it would stay there for a while, and then it would just move to another place super fast. And I remember thinking to myself, like, that can't be like a drone. Like, that can't be some kid's toy. There's not going to be a kid out in the forest in the middle of the night. Um, and we could not figure out what it was. We filmed it, and my wife took frame by frame images of it. And each frame, the object is a different shape and color. So in one frame, it's a triangle that's purple. And then in the next frame, it's a circle that's yellow. And in the next frame, it's a rectangle that's red. And
Do you
we
still have
couldn't
the
figure out.
video?
Yeah, yeah. And I wonder if I can, I'll send you the frame by
Yeah.
frame stills that we took of it. And we could not figure out what it was. And we kind of got freaked out. And then we started looking on the internet, and 4 other places around the northern United States had seen that same thing that same
Wow.
night, all across the northern US. And it was so weird. I'll never know what it was. I don't know, but I'll
Yeah.
send you the image.
Yeah, please. I've been
Yeah.
watching. There's this new series that doc series that released on Netflix called Encounters, and it's basically
Oh,
about this, about really big encounters in the world that wasn't seen by just one or two person. Like there's this thing that 300 people saw this thing. This other place that like a lot of people saw it, and they have the reports from militaries denying it initially, and then giving other explanations. So it sounds so suspicious, And then they have records of the flight signals, and they can see there was something that was moving so fast that even in the other military vessels wasn't moving as fast and was this place or that place. And it matched with the sites that people were seeing, So it's very fascinating. If your wife likes it, Encounters on Netflix. So
I
two
have,
things.
yes.
Yeah.
I'm sure I'm positive she's been watching it, and I know I've seen some of that with her. And we just watched a special about a really famous case in Brazil and Virginia, I think, that happened.
Yeah.
I don't know if you know about that case. And
it's very famous. It's it's the ET of Virginia. It's like the extraterrestrial of Virginia. Yeah.
Oh, and it was absolutely it's unbelievable. I mean, it is beyond explanation. It just the most simple explanation is that it happened.
Yeah.
Like it couldn't be a conspiracy at that level. It was just there's too much. There's too many people saw too much. There's too much data that supports all of it. There was too much suspicious behavior from the government. It's just incredible. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, there is people that don't think it's actually aliens, but just beings from another dimension. As you said, like we only have this very limited sense of reality. I was reading a book by Stephen Hawking, and he said that there is a scientific theory with stuff that evidence proving that there is actually 8 dimensions, but we only experience 3. So what the fuck is up with the other 8, with the other 5?
I know. Don't you wish sometimes that you because like when you don't have a sense, you just simply cannot understand what it is. It's like, it's like somebody who's been blind their whole life. There's no real way to explain to them what seeing is, even though you wish you could. And so I wonder, like, in what ways are we all blind to certain things that it's beyond our understanding. It's almost like you can barely imagine it, but I wish that I could,
Yeah. And even the senses we have, like our sight, we can't see everything. There is like infrared or like ultraviolet, all this kind of stuff they're missing. And some animals can see some stuff we see, they can see some stuff we hear, they can't. And so there's always this thing that the reality we see, it's the model we have from the senses we got and from the perspective we have. But the model you have is probably different than mine because the place you were born, the people you are, and then it's this beautiful phrase that a comedian that really inspired me, that actually inspired the show, Pete Holmes, that said, if I were this other person, I would be this other person, So it's be able to recognize that we all have this very limited perception of reality, and what we believe not necessarily is true. Our experience is not the basis of other people's experiences. And that helps us see a more complete picture of reality if we take input from other people too, So that's probably the dimensions too. We don't see everything. So there's a lot of this weird stuff we don't understand. So we create these labels to help us make some sense of it. There's a phrase that I heard recently, is that God is the name of the blanket we throw over the mystery of the stuff we don't understand,
That's a really beautiful way of putting it. I love that because it's true throughout the ages. And the one thing that most cultures have in common, all cultures actually throughout history, is that they would explain the unknown by some godlike being. So
and not necessarily this guy that's in the sky judging us.
Right.
It's just something, the mystery of being aware, of being alive, That's
like some force that was far beyond our understanding. Like almost every culture has developed something surrounding that, so it's so interesting. I wonder if someday, because we do have our senses that we have, maybe someday a human will be born who kind of has a sixth sense, like for real, it's totally not impossible to imagine. So
well, there is people that can kind of see sounds or hear colors, and sometimes under the effect of psychedelics, you can experience that too. I remember one day I was having a shroom trip, and I could feel, I was listening to the Beatles. I love the Beatles. And they, like the music was playing me, like my body, like was vibrating. It's kind of because of the music, So we have ways, and psychedelics are, you can achieve the states of altered perception, like psychedelics, without using any kind of substance. You can use music, like as you're a musician, there's like rhythm music that can get you to this kind of state. So there's really stuff out there that we're not accessing, and sometimes there's way for us to access this, and maybe there's even more stuff that we haven't figured out how to get there yet.
Yeah, I'm sure there is, right? There has to be.
Yeah, I mean, we can explore. And talking about this kind of, we're talking about mysteries and God and these greater things. Do you have any kind of spirituality or religion or even a philosophy that helps you guide you through life?
Yeah, I'm not classically religious. It's interesting because my family, my mother is Roman Catholic, and she raised us to know that religion. It doesn't really, in my opinion, it's not for me, but I think that there has to be some kind of I don't know if it's a conscious force. I certainly don't think it's a human-centric force, but I think that there is some kind of like immense unity to the universe that's beyond our perception. And there's some kind of there's some kind of explanation in a way for everything that exists that's kind of mystical. I guess I'm a little bit of like the universe is sort of an uncaring entity. Like the life of me as an individual is of zero importance to the ongoings of the universe. But it's also like the quote where nothing you do will matter, but it still matters that you do it.
Yeah.
Where every tiny component of it has its part to play. And so it's there, I have these moments. I think astronauts experience these moments where they're removed enough from Earth that they can look at it as a unified thing. Yeah, and I think that once in a while I'll have this just brief insight where I'm like, oh, we're all somehow involved in something that ties us together. So it's kind of comforting to think that, because it's so easy for the world to be divisive and for people to not agree or have a common cause, but it's undeniable that we all do actually have one when you look from far enough away. So I like to think about that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I was raised religious too, Catholic, and then my parents went to this kind of Japanese religion called Messianic, with the Jorei thing, and then I became I went to like youth groups. Then I became atheist, because I started asking stuff and people would give me answers. And then and comedy, which I love, is very atheist, like George Carlin and this kind of stuff. But there's this comic that I really like. It's Pete Holmes, which is basically this podcast and stuff. But he's religious, and he made me see things in a really weird way, because like, all my comedian friends are atheists, and they say, oh, makes no sense, man. Well, the universe came from the Big Bang, and what came before the Big Bang? Oh, nothing came before the Big Bang. Oh, so there is nothing created everything. And it's, yeah, there's nothing, and it created something. And what happens when you die? Nothing, man. Nothing happens when you die. And then he says, oh, so you go back to your creator. Like, since nothing creates everything, and then you die and you become nothing, like you go back to your creator. And just like religious people, I was like, oh, fuck. It's like, it's the same thing,
Yeah, you're right. That's really fascinating. I haven't heard that line of thinking before, but it does make sense. Like, even if it can't be that there was nothing before there was something. That's simply like, it's simply two things that can't be true at the same time. What does it mean? I don't know, but
that's his argument too.
Yeah.
but it makes afterlife makes no sense, man. Oh yeah, because this makes a lot of sense, right? This
Right.
makes no fucking sense at all.
Sense.
So actually, it's a precedent for more shit that doesn't make sense, you know?
Exactly. It's true. And I think that some people it really makes them upset to think that life doesn't have a greater meaning, because I don't know if it does or not, but I remember that there's an evolutionary biologist named Richard Dawkins who once asked, well, there are incredibly beautiful things in this world. Over there's a mountain. What's the meaning of that mountain? And
Yeah.
the mountain doesn't have a meaning. It doesn't worry about its meaning. It's just there.
It's being.
It's just, it exists. It doesn't have a meaning. And I think that people aren't comfortable with applying that same line of thinking to the human existence, but it doesn't mean that there's, not some, it doesn't mean that like life is meaningless. I just think that we look at it the wrong way, like,
I like
maybe existing is its purpose. Existing is a purpose unto itself,
For sure. Like like something that I hear, like God being, just the existence, being oneness, and that's like we are all like manifestations of this God, like we're all awareness, and that's something that ties us together. Like we are the only species that's able to say, oh, these molecules, no, we are molecules, no, we're alive, and have these conversations that we are not born in the universe, we are born from the universe as a way to explore itself in some ways.
That's so true. It's like it can be kind of like whimsical and sad to think about existence and its purpose, but I don't know. Do you ever wake up at 3 a.m. and you're like, I'm going to die one day? Like that happens to me.
I don't know, but it's good too. I mean, because we don't want to stay here forever and see the people we love die, and we're staying here. We have a time, and I think I'm glad this is going to end someday, because it's tiresome too,
It has
I don't know.
And even vampires are not going to survive when the sun explodes. So I don't know what they think they're getting with their immortality. But
and I like this saying that like what the purpose of life is giving life purpose. You as the thing you said, like love requires work, and life too. You just can't expect to have all figured out. You have to give yourself your life purpose. Life doesn't have a purpose by itself. The purpose is for you to find it out there, I think. Like what makes sense or what makes you tick, I don't know.
Right, because you know what the ending is going to be. And so like there's a video game like this that I love. Okay, spoiler alert for anyone who has not played Hyper Light Drifter. Spoilers pending, so just plug your ears. But really, like, without totally spoiling it, you don't really win in the end. Like, like it's kind of about it's like the entire video game is sort of an examination of the fact that trying to avoid death is actually really not the whole purpose of everything. Like, like you can get to the end of the game without barely doing anything, or you can explore the entire overworld and complete every quest and whatever. And unfortunately, the outcome of what happens to you is actually still the same, no matter what. So it's taking the focus away from being about winning the game or getting what you thought you wanted, and more about being like, well, what did you do before this moment came? Which is a good life lesson, actually.
Yeah, it's a fantastic metaphor for life. I don't know the game. Now I'm going to look for it, because it sounds very, very interesting. Yeah.
The soundtrack too is just absolutely spectacular. It's a wonderful game.
Mm-hmm. Now the soundtrack. Okay. And now one of the last questions, there are more whimsical, and we get to know a little bit like maybe your personality or what stuff you like. So Kelsey, if you could have any superpower imaginable, what would you choose, and what would be the first thing you would do with it?
Oh, Okay. Gosh, there's so many good options. But I would love, this was kind of, I don't know if people would agree that this is a good one. I would love to be able to fly like fast. Because it would be so cool. It would be so cool to be able to like fly around everywhere and see everything and be able to move in this way that was impossible. And I would love to go fly and see my family whenever I felt like it, or like fly over the mountain because it would be cool and fun. And I just think having like that kind of maneuverability and stuff would be so cool. And to know that, because whenever you go in an airplane, you're like, I could die, right? But if you could fly, I mean, you just could. You wouldn't ever be in danger of just like your engine failing and falling out of the sky. So I would love to be able to do that. Yeah. I don't know. What would you choose?
Well, I think about flying. I think about the invisibility. I want to be able to see things and observe. I love people watching. Like when I went to Gen Con this year, afterwards I spent like 5 days in New York, and I love like just buying a coffee or something and sitting in Central Park or in like a very busy street and watching people, especially in New York, because it's a very cosmopolitan city, and there's people that seem to have been coming from the future, and there's people that seems to be stuck in 1930s and all everything in between, So like being visible is something I really would like, but flying is also, I think, allowed to, not necessarily because of the stuff I could do, but the sensation, like being in the sky and the winds over you, it must be like a really fantastic feeling, of freedom and just, going to see the mountains and flying the mountains and in the forest. As you said, like you lived in the north of the USA and have these beautiful vistas and the aurora borealis and this kind of stuff would be really, really fantastic for sure. Yeah,
that would.
But something else now. If you could get any weird or fantastical thing, it could be a creature or like powers or place, anything it's fictional, and make it real in our world, what would it be and why is that?
Ooh, oh, this is tricky too. I tend to think about video games for some reason with this question. I mean, it would be super cool to have a Pokemon and have that kind of bond that the trainer has with their Pokemon. Like, I don't know why, but I loved the game since I was a kid, so it's just undeniable.
Me too.
I love it. Yeah. It'd be so great to have like a best friend that you went on adventures with that had these cool abilities and powers, and like a super pet in some way. That would be really cool.
What would you choose? Who? Like Charmeleon, Charizard, or Charmander, Charizard, or Squirtle? No.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
You got like all the evolutions.
Yeah.
You know them all.
No.
There was like Bulbasaur, and then
Bulbasaur, Squirtle, and not Charmeleon and Charizard. It's Charmander.
Yeah. Oh dang. I think I would probably choose Charmander because he's so cool. He turns into a flying dragon. Like, he's so cool. Yeah. I actually chose Bulbasaur because for a poor reason, because I knew that it would make the first gym easier to beat. I knew the first gym was like weak to grass. But like if I had been true to myself, I would have chosen Charmander. So in hindsight, yeah. Of those three, which would you choose?
I really like Squirtle because of the episode, like the Oculus, and they all seem like, yeah, we are cool, And I remember the video of this kid finding the Blastoise card and being like, yes, Blastoise. It was so fun.
Blastoise was so cool, and Squirtle definitely had the coolest attitude out of all of them.
Yeah. But I mean, I always like reds and fire. So yeah, Charmander is really, really tempting,
Mm-hmm.
My favorite color is red, so yeah, and fire.
Oh, see?
Yeah.
There you go. My favorite color is green, so that might have played into Bulbasaur as well, but yeah.
So finally, last question. Do you remember the last time you felt really happy and grateful for being here and being alive? And if you do, can you share with us what was it and how it was?
Yeah, I do think that generally I am a happy person and definitely grateful for all the cool stuff I get to do. Um, but like sometimes you have moments where you're like, you said it, you realize that you're like, wow, I'm so happy in this moment. It's like really special. I think one recently was when I was holding my little baby nephew, because he's just like, it's magical when you hold a baby that I mean, you as a father must know this. I don't have any children, but it was kind of the next closest thing that I have to having a child who's related to me. And I remember being like, wow, this is just like a really peaceful, like happy moment where I didn't feel like I was thinking about all the stuff I had to do, or like, letting my mind wander off in the directions it always wants to go. And I was able to just kind of be in this moment for longer than I normally am with this sweet little baby who was sleeping, and he was really happy that I was holding him. So that was definitely a very strikingly happy moment in my recent history. Yeah.
Yeah. I always feel like it's much easier to be happy when we are like present in the moment. And because of anxiety, I always like my mind always races to all the stuff I have to do or have to figure out. And as you mentioned that, like you were able to be still and be there with this baby or your nephew. And do you find that too? Do you have a hard time being present and enjoying the moments you're having, or not being like taken away? Because being human, we always like, sometimes we feel like puppets, like meat puppets. We have these thoughts and we're not even feeling our bodies. We're not feeling the clothes on our skin. And we have to make this very intentional effort, like okay, I'm here now, and I'm back in my body and not like in the clouds above my head.
Yeah, it is hard to really be in the moment, because I think a lot of people are, who do work like us. We're writers, we're creatives, we're always thinking about stuff we want to do. We've always got a project in the works, and
Daydreaming.
yeah, I definitely am a daydreamer too, like you. And it's hard to let that go even for a minute sometimes. And it can be hard when you're used to having a job that's like, I gotta hustle, to allow yourself to not hustle for a minute and not feel guilty about it. So you feel like, no, I got to be doing something productive all the time. Everything I do has to in some way line up with my goals and my ambitions and my creative plans. So yes, it can be hard to not get caught up in that, but I have to like make an effort to be like, no, I'm gonna make myself relax. I am not gonna do anything that is work adjacent, so it's hard. I don't know, do you find that hard too?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I have a year calendar with marking the days I'm doing work, and I feel pressure to keep going. But sometimes it gets like 10 p.m. and I haven't done anything, and I'm like, oh, I have to make something. And sometimes I stay a little bit late just to do something. But I'm trying to let go, and I'm trying to get in my headspace to miss a day,
It's hard. It's really hard. Yeah. And like, it's hard not to feel guilty if you're like, oh, I spent all day playing Legend of Zelda when I should have been researching. But you do have to let yourself take some breaks, otherwise it'll go crazy.
And then I start to mentalize, oh no, I wasn't playing, I was doing research.
Yes, I always say that. I'm like, Zelda's a game. I write games.
Of course, it's research,
Yeah.
Well, Kelsey, that's basically all the questions I have. I'm really glad you're here. I'm really glad we have this opportunity to talk. I've took all these great notes. I'm very interested about the video, and I could be continue talking, asking about music. That's something I'm very interested. I'm really glad I had the opportunity to talk to you about Bo Burnham, which is like my creative crush. But I wanted to give you an opportunity to, you have any weird thing to say to the weirdos who listen to this at home, or any something new you want people to check out before we go?
Ooh. Yeah, I just want to ask anyone listening, anyone who supports my work, to let yourself be as weird as you are.
Yeah.
That's really it.
That's a great message, people. Don't be afraid. Weird is the new wonderful. So let's get weird.
Yeah. Thanks so much for having me on, Diogo. It was so great to talk to you.
Yeah, it was fantastic.
Thank you for listening to Weird Games and Weirder People. If you'd like to keep up with the show, please subscribe to be notified when we release new episodes. If you'd like to support us, please leave a review or head on to code-fi.com/WGNWP. See you next time, and remember, weird is the new wonderful.